Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
Mr. Towers Chandler was ironing his nice suit in his small bedroom. One iron was getting hot on a small gas stove. The other iron was being pushed back and forth to make a nice straight line on his pants. We can imagine how he was getting ready. He did not have much money, so he had to be very careful with his clothes. Next, we will see him as he goes down the steps of his house, dressed very nicely, looking calm, sure of himself, and handsome. He looked like a typical young man from New York, getting ready for a fun evening. Chandler earned $18 each week. He worked in an architect's office. He was 22 years old and thought architecture was truly an art. He believed that the Flatiron Building in New York was not as beautiful as the great cathedral in Milan. Every week, Chandler saved $1. After 10 weeks, he had saved $10. With this money, he bought himself one special evening. He dressed up like a rich man, went to the best part of the city, and ate a very nice dinner. With $10, a man could pretend to be rich for a few hours. The money was enough for a good meal, a nice bottle of wine, tips, a smoke, a cab ride, and some small extras. This special evening every 10 weeks made Chandler very happy. For a young woman, a debutante ball is a special memory. But for Chandler, every 10 weeks brought a joy as exciting and new as the first time. To sit among happy people under palm trees, with hidden music playing, to see and be seen by people in such a lovely place. This was his happiness. Chandler walked up Broadway with other people dressed for the evening. For this night, he was both looking at others and being looked at. For the next 69 evenings, he would eat simple meals at cheap places, or sandwiches and beer in his small bedroom. He was okay with that because one special evening made up for many boring ones. Chandler walked slowly until he reached the bright and busy part of Broadway. The evening was still young, and he wanted to enjoy every moment. People looked at him with bright, curious, admiring, and interested eyes because he looked like someone who enjoyed the evening and had a good time. At a certain corner, he stopped and thought about going back to the fancy restaurant where he usually ate on his special evenings. Just then, a girl came quickly around the corner, slipped on some icy snow, and fell on the sidewalk. Chandler quickly helped her get up. The girl limped to the wall of the building, leaned against it, and thanked him shyly. "I think my ankle is hurt," she said. "It twisted when I fell." "Does it hurt a lot?" asked Chandler. "Only when I put weight on it. I think I will be able to walk in a minute or two." "If I can help you more," said the young man, "I can call a cab or—" "Thank you," said the girl, softly but warmly. "I am sure you don't need to bother yourself any more. It was so clumsy of me, and my shoe heels are very practical. I can't blame them at all." Chandler looked at the girl and found himself quickly interested in her. She was pretty in a nice way, and her eyes were both happy and kind. She was dressed simply in a plain black dress that looked like a uniform that shopgirls wear. Her shiny dark brown hair was under a cheap black straw hat with a velvet ribbon and bow. She looked like a model for a hard-working, respectable girl. A sudden idea came to the young architect. He would ask this girl to eat dinner with him. His special dinners were always lonely, but this time could be different with a lady's company. He was sure this girl was a lady. Her manner and way of speaking showed that. Even though she was dressed plainly, he thought he would enjoy sitting at a table with her. These thoughts went through his mind quickly, and he decided to ask her. It was not proper, of course, but sometimes working girls did not mind such things. They usually understood men well and trusted their own judgment more than silly rules. His $10 could pay for a very nice dinner for both of them. The dinner would be a wonderful experience in the girl's boring life, and her enjoyment would make him feel even better. "I think," he said to her, seriously, that your foot needs more rest than you think. Now, I have an idea that can help your foot and do me a favor. I was going to eat dinner all alone when you fell around the corner. Come with me, and we'll have a nice dinner and a pleasant talk together. By the time we are done, your foot will be better, and you can walk home easily. The girl looked quickly up into Chandler's clear, pleasant face. Her eyes sparkled once very brightly, and then she smiled openly. But we don't know each other. It wouldn't be right, would it? She said, uncertainly. There is nothing wrong about it, said the young man, honestly. I'll introduce myself. Let me, Mr. Towers Chandler. After our dinner, which I will try to make as nice as possible, I will say good evening to you, or take you safely to your door, whichever you like. But, dear me, said the girl, looking at Chandler's perfect clothes, in this old dress and hat. Don't worry about that, said Chandler happily. I'm sure you look more charming in them than anyone we will see in the fanciest dinner clothes. My ankle does still hurt, admitted the girl, trying to take a limping step. I think I will accept your invitation, Mr. Chandler. You may call me Miss Marion. Come then, Miss Marion, said the young architect, cheerfully but politely. You won't have far to walk. There is a very good restaurant in the next block. You will have to lean on my arm, like this, and walk slowly. It is lonely eating dinner all by myself. I'm just a little bit glad that you slipped on the ice. When the two were settled at a nice table, with a good waiter ready to help, Chandler began to feel the real joy that his special outing always brought him. The restaurant was not as fancy as the one further down Broadway, which he always liked, but it was almost as good. The tables were filled with people who looked like they were doing well. There was a good orchestra playing softly so people could talk, and the food and service were excellent. His companion, even in her cheap hat and dress, held herself with a style that made her natural beauty shine. And it is certain that she looked at Chandler, with his lively but calm manner and his bright, honest blue eyes, with something close to admiration in her own lovely face. Then it was that the excitement of Manhattan, the craze of fuss and feathers, the germ of boasting, the provincial plague of pretending took hold of Towers Chandler. He was on Broadway, surrounded by show and style, and there were eyes watching him. In that play, he decided to act like a fashionable person with money and taste for one night. He was dressed for the part, and all his good angels couldn't stop him from acting it. So he started to talk to Miss Marion about clubs, tea parties, golf, riding horses, dog kennels, dances, and trips abroad. He hinted about a yacht at Larchmont. He could see that she was very impressed by this talk, so he kept up his act by making random hints about great wealth and mentioned a few famous names. It was Chandler's short special evening, and he was making the most of it as he saw it. And yet once or twice, he saw the real goodness of this girl shine through the fog of his pride. This way of living that you speak of, she said, sounds so useless and without a purpose. Don't you have any work to do that might interest you more? My dear Miss Marion, he exclaimed, work? Think of dressing every day for dinner, of making many visits in an afternoon, with a policeman at every corner ready to stop your car and take you to the station if you drive faster than a donkey cart. We who do nothing are the hardest workers in the land. The dinner was finished, the waiter given a good tip, and the two walked out to the corner where they had met. Miss Marion walked very well now. Her limp was hardly noticeable. Thank you for a nice time, she said, honestly. I must go home now. I like the dinner very much, Mr. Chandler. He shook hands with her, smiling warmly, and said something about a card game at his club. He watched her for a moment, walking rather quickly eastward, and then he found a cab to drive him slowly home. In his cold bedroom, Chandler put away his evening clothes for a 69 days rest. He did this thoughtfully. That was a wonderful girl, he said to himself. She's really nice, too, I'm sure, even if she does have to work. Maybe if I'd told her the truth instead of all that fancy talk, we might have, but, darn it, I had to act the part of my clothes. So spoke the brave who was born and raised in the busy city of Manhattan. The girl, after leaving her new friend, quickly walked across town until she arrived at a large and fancy mansion 2 blocks to the east, facing a rich avenue. Here she entered quickly and went up to a room where a beautiful young lady in a fancy dress was looking anxiously out the window. "Oh, you wild thing!" exclaimed the older girl when the other entered. "When will you stop scaring us this way? It is 2 hours since you ran out in that old dress and Marie's hat. Mom has been so worried. She sent Louis in the car to try to find you. You are a bad, thoughtless girl." The older girl pressed a button, and a maid came in a moment. "Marie, tell Mom that Miss Marian has come back." "Don't scold, sister. I only ran down to Madame Theo's to tell her to use mauve instead of pink. My costume and Marie's hat were just what I needed. Everyone thought I was a shop girl, I am sure. Dinner is over, dear. You stayed so late." "I know. I slipped on the sidewalk and twisted my ankle. I couldn't walk. So I went into a restaurant and sat there until I felt better. That's why I was so late." The 2 girls sat in the window seat, looking out at the lights and the stream of cars in the avenue. The younger one cuddled down with her head in her sister's lap. "We will have to marry someday," she said dreamily. "Both of us. We have so much money that we won't be allowed to disappoint everyone. Do you want me to tell you the kind of man I could love, sis?" "Go on, you silly girl," smiled the other. "I could love a man with dark and kind blue eyes, who is gentle and respectful to poor girls, who is handsome and good and doesn't try to flirt. But I could love him only if he had a goal, a purpose, some work to do in the world. I wouldn't care how poor he was if I could help him build his way up. But, sister dear, the kind of man we always meet, the man who lives an idle life between society and his clubs. I could not love a man like that, even if his eyes were blue and he were ever so kind to poor girls he met on the street.